One night, 15 years ago, the Witch of Silence appeared after the demise of the queen and cursed the king along with his only son Oscar that they would never beget an heir and their blood would eat away any womb it touched. This essentially will end the farce's bloodline with Oscar. Over the past 15 years, the young prince has been looking all over the land to find a cure. One day he sneaks out of the castle with his attendant Lazar to find the Witch of the Azure Moon to ask her if she can lift the curse. The aide worries that this witch might add another curse rather than help him, but Oscar is willing to take the risk as he's at a dead end. If this fails, then he will hunt down the Witch of Silence and get her to lift what she has done. The duo cross the rocky desert as the Azure Tower comes into view. They tie their mounts near the entrance and proceed to the door. All the while, Lazar tries to dissuade Oscar from entering given how dangerous this venture is. No one has managed to reach the top of the tower to meet the witch in decades, plus the attendant wouldn't know what to do if something happened to His Highness. The prince is confident that everything will work out and carelessly opens the door to the tower. He realizes that the entrance is just as the records report, and if the accuracy is to continue, then several challenges await them within the tower walls. The one who overcomes them and reaches the top will have their wish granted by the witch. Oscar begins his ascent and asks the whining attendant to wait at the bottom because it's dangerous. Lazar is unable to leave him alone, so reluctantly follows. They arrive at the first test, which has snakes on the floor and a slab with mathematical theory that was studied a century ago, but it was solved 10 years ago, so he applies the answer and solves it. The snakes on the floor are also not poisonous and disappear with the stone theory. The duo are transported to the next level via magic circles. All the while at the top of the tower, Tinashe, who is the Witch of the Azure Moon, receives word from her familiar Litola that they have their first challengers in a while. This is a surprise to the witch, who thought that people had forgotten about her tower. The master is not interested in watching the new contenders ascend, but she reminds Litola what to do when they fail. She is not sure they will make it past the first guardian beast. Meanwhile, Oscar makes it past the first guardian beast. Lazar finds the prince's fearlessness scary when he states that the encounter was a good warm-up. He looks down, wondering if he will meet his demise if he falls. They have reached the halfway point of the tower. As they proceed, it is revealed that the last person to climb to the top was his great-grandfather, which was 70 years ago. He was the only one who succeeded out of the 10 that tried the climb. Oscar comments on how easy it has been so far, but the attendant still tries to persuade him to turn back. They enter the next room and are met by 2 gargoyles. They come to life and attack, but the prince takes the first one down with ease. Litola returns to Tinashe to inform her that the challengers have made it to the stone statue room. She begins to prepare some tea for them, but she feels like it would be a waste and starts wondering if they should give them a consolation prize for their efforts. The familiar lets her master know that the challenger will easily clear it based on what she has witnessed so far. Her prediction is right because Oscar expertly eliminates the second creature, and Lazar is just relieved that he's not hurt. The prince discloses that one hit from the gargoyles would have been his final rest. The ground suddenly quakes as they make their way to the next transportation circle. Shortly after, the floor crumbles, splitting Lazar from the prince. The footing around him continues to crumble. He pleads to Oscar to go ahead, and before he falls, he tells the prince that he will wait for the day he becomes king. The prince calls to his attendant as he falls down. Oscar proceeds forward. He finds himself at the top of the tower and enters the last door. He's in awe of the penthouse view, but quickly gets on guard when he hears the welcoming voice of Tinashe. She floats down and offers him a seat to drink some of the tea she brewed. The witch introduces herself but comments that few people call her by that name. Oscar remarks on how she doesn't look like a witch, and she lets him know how naive that statement is, given the powers of her kind. The prince is relieved to hear that Lazar is safely sleeping at the bottom of the tower uninjured. He feels a little bit more comfortable and sits down. He asks if Tinashe has used magic to alter her appearance. The witch informs him that it's all natural. This is a surprise to Oscar because he has heard that Tinashe has lived hundreds of years, but she doesn't have any wrinkles. She explains that witches live many times longer than humans, so her body has stopped aging. Tinashe turns the attention to him by asking for the name of the first person to climb the tower by himself. Oscar gives his full name, and the witch recognizes the Farsa's family name. The prince reveals that his great-grandfather is Regius. She notes that he looks like him, but Regius had a more kind-hearted face. The crown prince apologizes for looking so heartless and having a face that looks like a brick wall. This makes her chuckle and apologize. She does admit that Oscar looks manlier than him because Regius had a childish side to him. The lady reveals that she lives with her familiar when asked, and summons Litola to greet the champion. She also informs him that his companion is safe, and this prompts him to ask what happens to the challengers who never make it back. Tinashe gets offended when he questions if she performs a mass burial for them. The witch makes it clear that no one dies in her tower. The challenger is sent to the ground floor before any fatal blows land. Those who fail to climb to the top have their memories altered a bit, and they are sent off to random corners of the mainland. It is a fair penalty since most of them come to prove themselves or gain fame. Latola adds that her master cures the challengers who came with genuine problems regardless. The witch didn't want anyone to know that, so she gets annoyed with her familiar for disclosing such information. After hearing that, the prince finds her to be more of a mystery. Tinashe likes to keep it that way, so she doesn't interfere with the affairs of humans, unlike some of her colleagues. The prince wished the Witch of Silence lived with the same ethos. Tinashe guesses that this is related to why he came. The prince narrates how the Witch of Silence cursed his father and him. Tinashe is interested on why they ended up with a curse like that. Oscar reveals that his father doesn't wish to speak on the topic, so he has never asked him the cause, but he is sure that it is related to his late mother. He has been trying to find a way to break the curse, but he's yet to stumble upon a clue on how to do that. He informs the Azure Witch that this is his reason for coming, but before she even offers her consultation, she gives a disclaimer that there is no guarantee that any curse can be lifted. Magic is organized and operated using a shared set of rules. However, curses don't follow any of these tenets. They are created by imbuing words with magical power. This means that curses vary depending on who casts them. In some extreme situations, the caster might not be able to undo the curse if they don't leave a hint on how to break it. In substitution for this, the curse doesn't hold overwhelming power, meaning it can't eliminate the person and only triggers in unpredictable ways. The prince feels like the one put on him is powerful. Tinashe agrees, and reveals that his curse goes beyond what she has described. The reason for this is that what he has been afflicted with is not a curse, but rather a variant of a blessing. She touches his face to reveal the part of his body that the blessing has been cast on. Blessings and curses are cast in the same manner, but they vary in the direction of power. Blessing magnifies the energy that's already present, which is why they can be powerful depending on the caster's prowess. The blessing that has been cast on him tries to protect any unborn child with an extremely powerful force, so a normal mother will not be able to bear this. Magic could be used to alleviate these issues if the blessing was analyzed, but there are 20 layers intertwined within it. Tinashe looks at the magic seal and concedes that the Witch of Silence is powerful indeed. She apologizes, prompting Oscar to assume that she can't break it. Tinashe glosses over his question, stating that she can't let him leave empty-handed. She brings out a bowl to try and find a woman who can withstand the child's protective power. The prince is skeptical, but the witch is sure that there will be one or two on the mainland. She searches based on someone's magical power and resistance, so he will have to overlook any other aspects like appearance. Oscar asks, what if they are married, elderly, or have a child? The witch tells him that if she's married, then there is nothing they can do. If she's old, magic can solve that. And if she's a child, he can wait till she is of age and accept him. It is not uncommon for there to be an age gap in royal marriages. The prince cuts to the chase, asking Tinashe if she could withstand the Witch of Silence's magical power. She obviously answers that she would have no trouble against it, and the look of dread washes over her face shortly after realizing what Oscar is trying to allude to. The prince simply says that it is a lot easier than trying to look for a woman who might not even exist. He wants to make his wish as a champion for Tinashe to leave the tower and become his wife. Tinashe jolts up, letting him know that she can't possibly accept. She confirms no history of marriage or even having a boyfriend when asked. Since she told him that age is not a problem, then she makes the perfect candidate. She tries to dissuade him by informing him that the council will be in uproar at the idea of him introducing witch blood into the royal family. Oscar is okay with that. Tinashe informs that she would be his great-grandmother by now if she granted wishes like that. This hints to us that Regius tried to rizz her up in the past, but the prince makes it clear that he's not giving up like his grandfather and that he's his own man. Tinashe doesn't care and rejects the offer. She even threatens to alter his memories and return him to his castle if he persists. She prepares to cast the spell, and the prince takes a stance ready to draw. The witch notices that he is holding the royal sword called Acacia. It's the only blade in the world boasting full magical resistance. She's at a disadvantage when facing that weapon, so she cancels her spell and proposes that they talk it out. The prince agrees and takes a seat. He recalls that she lived in the Farsus castle for half a year 70 years ago. Tinashe has fond memories of teaching magic, raising flowers, and more. This inspires him to wish for her to leave the tower and live with him in Farsus for a year. She agrees to leave the tower to act as his protector. The two proceed down, and a call from Oscar wakes Lazar up. He introduces Tinashe as the witch's pupil, who will be joining them to help cure his curse. They greet each other and they set off to the castle. Lazar can't believe that the prince made it out unscathed. She lights up the path for the horses by using her magic and informs the prince that she can also incinerate any target. He tells her that it will not be necessary. All he wants is for her to stay by his side, but during her stay, she can make the Pharsis castle her home if she so wishes. She, however, alerts him that it will not happen. They later arrive at the castle and Tinashe gets straight to work and casts a spell on Oscar that negates all external attacks, whether they be physical or magical. As long as she's alive, no other human can break the spell. Oscar feels like he's now living on cheat mode. Tinashe tells him that this is the least that she could do since they have formed a contract. Although there is a caveat to the spell, as it doesn't protect him from poison and psychological attack, so she warns him to be careful. The prince still wishes that she marries him, which she rejects again. Tinashe later helps Lazar move some books as they discuss the successor issue. The attendant discloses that even Oscar's cousins from the Branch family went missing 15 years ago due to an unsolved incident. Meanwhile, Sylvia tries to light up some chandeliers when one falls on her. Tinashe nonchalantly prevents it from crashing down without an incantation while walking past them. Sylvia and her colleague are in awe and already know of the rumors that the prince brought her from the witch's tower. Some commotion outside from the crowd catches Tinashe's attention. As Lazar thanks her for the help, they both go to the window to investigate. General Alce and Meridina are having an intense sparring sword match, which seems to have their subordinates hyped. Alce takes the win when he disarms her. Tinashe is impressed with his skills, triggering the attendant to reveal that, although he's one of the younger generals, he's the most skilled out of all of them. Lazar quickly clarifies that Oscar is still stronger than Alce. The witch lets out a sigh after realizing that the guy is a fanboy of the prince. Based on what she has witnessed so far, she's not surprised that the crown prince conquered her tower. Seeing them clash steel makes Tinashe also want to practice. Since it has been so long, Lazar is surprised to hear this. She gets changed and challenges Alce to a sparring match. The crowd gasp in amazement as she easily fends off his attacks. The general feels like her swordsmanship is too good to be a mage and suggests she join the knights, as that is where her talents would be better utilized. Meridina watches and is salty by the attention and spotlight that this newcomer is getting. She even wonders if it's safe to have a witch's apprentice near the prince. She pulls Alce's cheeks when he tells her that jealousy doesn't suit her. Latola later catches up with her master and reports some information to her. The witch proceeds to Oscar's office based on this information. The prince is surprised to see her dressed like she's prepared for a journey. She informs him that she's leaving the castle for a couple of days. The prince tries to protest, but she makes it clear that she's free to go anywhere she wants and assures him that she will be back. He at least wants to know where she's going. After a pause, she discloses that she will be going to the magical lake in Druza. Lazar gasps in distress and reveals that the area is dangerous because that is the location where the demonic beast was sealed away 70 years ago. The witch alerts them that there are huge surges of high magical power emanating from the place. She's going there to investigate. Oscar informs her that he'll join, but she tries to protest, saying that the crown prince shouldn't be venturing out willy-nilly. He enlightens her that that area falls under their jurisdiction, so the state will not be in favor of the witch investigating the anomaly alone. To make it official, Oscar says that he will gather a unit to follow them, but Tinashe reminds him that it's not her job to protect anyone other than the crown prince. She gives him 1 hour to gather his forces. All the while at the magical lake, Valt and Morales discuss how they are sure that Tinashe will notice the activity because she has eyes all around the kingdom. After all, they are both looking for the same person. Back at the castle, Oscar has gathered Alce, Meridina, Sylvia, and some other fodder. Sylvia gets excited to see that Tinashe has a dragon familiar. The mage introduces herself and reaches to pet the creature. Meridina watches on, ready to attack the dragon if it acts hostile, but it only yawns, which startles Sylvia. The witch warns her to be careful since the creature is not used to people. She tells Oscar that she was going to ride the creature if she was going alone, which puzzles him because it looks so small. He turns his attention to the unit to brief them on their mission to survey the magical lake. The prince warns them to stay vigilant given the danger of the area. He also informs them to follow Tinashe's orders, which surprises them. The witch gets a flashback to being in this room 70 years prior. The prince brings her back to the present when he calls for them to go. The guy is smitten by how the light bounces off her. They teleport to the Yunarade fortress nearby and proceed on foot to the lake. As they pass through the area, it is revealed that the neighboring nation of Druza invaded Farsa 70 years ago. The army drove them back, but the invaders unleashed a demonic beast that they didn't have full control of. It rampaged and destroyed both allies, foes, and the land itself. Finally, it was the Azure Witch who sealed it away. However, the miasma from the creature poisoned the earth, turning the area into this barren wasteland, where a protective barrier is needed for one to pass through. Tanasha reveals that all she could do was seal it away since there were humans in the area. She confesses to how formidable of an opponent the magic beast was. She pauses and calls out to the person that lurks in the miasma. A Druza mage appears surprised to see the witch. He was a very young mage at the time of their last meeting. The guy teases them before ambushing them with a spell. It strikes down the fodder, and Oscar saves Meridina by putting his protective spell around him to good use. Tinasha attacks the mage only for it to be an illusion. She is certain that the kingdom of Druza is trying to revive the beast, since that mage was one of the people controlling the creature during the war. They tend to the wounded, and everyone is shocked by the revelation that Tinasha is a witch. She apologizes to them for not telling them earlier. She didn't want to startle anyone. Sylvia rushes to assure her that they don't feel that way. Tinasha swats her hand away before holding it to inform her that witches are objects of fear, so she shouldn't try to be chummy. The Crown Prince suggests they retreat for now and gather a larger force to strike. Tinasha lets him know that she's going after the mage. The witch is sure that they will be looking to undo the seal with greater haste now that they have been spotted. Oscar wants to go with her, but she promises him that she will not die or leave him before their contract has finished. With this assurance, he lets her go. She orders her dragon Narc to transform into its bigger size and rides it into battle. Shortly, she arrives at the site of the sealed beast and eliminates all the mages present. Tinasha breaks the seal of the monster herself. She intends to finish off the creature now that there are no humans around. The witch orders Narc to move a safe distance till the battle is over. Tinasha showcases elite swordsmanship, agility, and spellcasting as she clashes with the monster. The witch finally defeats the demonic beast, but the creature launches a last-ditch attack that significantly injures her. Narc brings her back to the fortress where Oscar waits. They rush her for treatment. Sylvia later informs him that her condition has stabilized. He goes to see her and is surprised to see that she has grown. Tinasha reveals that she accelerated her bodily growth to heal her internal organ injuries. The prince thanks her for saving them from the demonic beast. Meanwhile, at the site of the battle, Morales and Valt recover one of the gems from the monster. As they leave, the two are confronted by Renaku, who wishes to have confirmation as to which nation they hail from. Valt is more interested in learning what he's doing in the area. Renaku came to defeat the demon beast, but he can see that Tinasha got to it first. Valt discloses that she has been looking for him for a long time. Renaku is aware of this, and expresses his intention to meet her when the time is right. Valt comments on how he always treats Tinasha with arrogance in every history. This confuses Renaku, but Valt has no intention of explaining. He simply reveals that they are bystanders that help bring about events that should occur. Renaku doesn't plan to let them go and fires a spell at the duo. Valt sacrifices himself and transports Morales to safety as she screams for him. Meanwhile, at the castle, Sylvia helps Tinasha cut her hair. She is surprised that the mage is not scared of a witch like her. Sylvia acknowledges that witches are scary and is familiar with records of the 5 witches that destroyed a nation in a single night. However, she doesn't get that vibe from Tinasha. After the fresh trim, Oscar presents her officially to his father and announces his plan to marry her. She protests this, reminding him that she's only there to lift his curse. She assures King Kevin that although it's a high-level curse, with some more analysis, she'll figure it out. Oscar teases her about taking responsibility if she's not able to do so, which leads to a married couple-style fight between the two. The king can see that they are on good terms. After the meeting, the prince sneaks off into the Bile Forest with Lazar. They are investigating the cause of 9 villagers meeting their demise when they ventured inside. The victims were found with their bodies dried and shriveled up. The assistant enters worried mode and starts to advise Oscar that they should turn back because Tinasha will be angry if she found out. The prince complains about how she never allows him to adventure. He makes a note to himself not to take damage, otherwise his protector will be alerted to his escapades. As they move through the area, Lazar finds a pearl-like flower and gets attacked when he tries to interact with it. Oscar senses the danger and cuts the vines before it ensnares his assistant. The two speculate that this could be the thing eliminating people. The plant looks like it would suck the moisture out of its prey. The prince stabs the big plant, but it releases some poison rain. Oscar protects himself with his cape and suggests they evacuate, but one flower shoots some poison gas at Lazar that knocks him out. Lucrezia sits on a tree wondering what the two are doing in the forest. The assistant wakes up in a house and the prince is casually sitting at a table. Oscar informs him that Lucrezia is the one who gave him the antidote. She gives him a drink and introduces herself as the Witch of the Forest. She makes it known that she's acquainted with Tinashe. When she asks the prince about her, Lucrezia was sure he was affiliated with her when she saw the defensive barrier, since she's the only one who could cast that. Oscar divulges that Tinashe is no longer in the tower and is currently acting as his protector. Lucrezia guesses that he climbed the tower. Lazar uses this opportunity to hype up his boss, stating that he cleared it alone. He even discloses the prince's wish to marry Tinashe. Lucrezia finds that interesting and feels like she needs to know love. However, she reveals that spirit sorcerers like Tinashe need to remain pure, so they shouldn't have relations with others as it increases the magical power needed to practice their craft. But she's sure that this will not make a bit of difference for Tinashe, given her level of power. Lucrezia offers to help win her over when she hears that Tinashe refused to marry him, but the prince declines the offer. The Witch of the Forest casts a spell on Oscar while getting up. She pleads for forgiveness for antagonizing him when he prepares to attack. Lazar appeals for him to consider her since she saved them and helped them solve what has been causing the mysterious deaths. She gives them an open invitation to come back whenever they want, so the duo returns to the castle. Tinashe has also returned from her business and notices something different about Oscar, but he swears that he's fine. The following morning, he wakes up and is greeted by the witch as he leaves his room. She asks him if he's getting plenty rest. He guarantees her that he is. Tinashe goes to Lazar to ask him if the prince has been dealing with female companions recently, but he confirms that Oscar has no such companions. She meets up with the other mages to inform them of her suspicion that the prince has a female companion because his life force has been fluctuating these days. She also explains how a lady's perfume has been lingering around him. Tinashe suddenly gets annoyed, causing the room to shake when she notices something. The witch excuses herself and confronts Oscar for not telling her that he met Lucrezia. He didn't see it as a big deal and apologizes. She already warned him that her spell is not impervious to psychological attacks. The lady doesn't want to be held responsible if he's taken out by such a spell. Lucrezia has cast a spell that takes his life force through erotic dreams, but his memories will be erased by the time he wakes up. She's just happy she noticed it before it was too late, otherwise he would have met his demise in a week. Tinashe simply tells him to sleep as normal that night. She enters the dream and instructs him to eliminate the spell that is disguised as her. He reluctantly ends the dream version of Tinashe. He jolts awake and tells her not to order him to do such a thing again. She makes him aware that he might have to end her with his anti-magic sword one day. She leaves him to get some rest and confronts Lucrezia. The Witch of the Forest reveals that it was her way of saying hello to an old friend. They have a drink and discuss Oscar. Lucrezia admits that the prince cares about Tinashe a lot. The topic changes to the curse that has afflicted him. Lucrezia gives her old friend a sample of Oscar's residue to help her break the spell cast by the Witch of Silence. The following morning, she goes to Oscar's room and they hug and apologize to each other. The crown prince later spars with some of the knights and he's clearly on another level as he disarms them. Alce gets fired up and pleads with Oscar to train with him, but the result is the same as the others as his blade goes flying out of his hand after a few exchanges. The prince spots Tinashe watching and calls her to spar with him, but she refuses, stating that there is nothing in it for her. She ends up joining when he reminds her that this serves as training and entices her by adding that she can use magic during their exchange. She wonders if Oscar could grow to be a man capable of eliminating a witch like her. Tinashe expresses her demand that he uses his blade Acacia, which he agrees to. The witch fires some spells that the prince is forced to block and evade. This leaves him open to a frontal attack. As she heals him after their session, Alce comments on how amazing the two fought. Meridina focuses on Tinashe's use of magic with close combat. It's unheard to see a mage who uses a sword to cover their offense and defense. To Meridina, it looked like Tinashe was either testing the crown prince or trying to teach him, since she was smiling throughout the encounter. The witch confirmed something when Oscar saw her camouflaged vine attack and dodged it. The prince feels like he has light wounds considering she was using magic. He wonders if she went easy on him. Tinashe explains that complicated spells requires incantations and focus, and admits that she wouldn't want to fight him in close-quarter combat again because he doesn't give the chance to unleash those kind of spells. The guy uses this chance to ask her to marry him again, but she gives him the same response and reminds him just how much older she is. He gets back to the office, and his father hands him a note announcing the arrival of an envoy from the tiny nation of Kuzco to the north. The ambassador wants to see the Witch of the Azure Moon. Oscar wonders how they knew that Tinashe was in the castle. The king decides to leave the matter to his son to deal with. The prince chooses to meet this envoy first. He introduces himself as Kagar when granted an audience and makes his request to meet the witch again. Oscar bluntly tells him that they don't have any witches at the castle and wishes to know how he came to that conclusion. The envoy stands his ground that the witch is in their care and even calls her by the name Lady Ati, which is a surprise to the prince. Meanwhile, Tinashe comes to see Oscar at his quarters, but she's greeted by Morales, who formally introduces herself as the prince's personal maid. The help was specially recommended by General Eddard. After one look at Morales, Tinashe understands her true role at the palace. The maid is surprised to hear this, but the witch can see an aura oozing out of her. Tinashe didn't come to interfere with her work and leaves after learning that the prince is not home. The witch is later visited by Lucrezia, who brings up the sparring match with Oscar. She warns Tinashe not to make the man with a blade that negates all magic any stronger than he already is. Tinashe feels like it would be nice to have someone capable of eliminating her if anything happens. The Azure Moon Witch wonders if she's growing tired of searching for Ranaku. Oscar disrupts their little catch-up and addresses Tinashe as Adi while informing her that they have a guest who wants to see her. She unconsciously responds to being called that name. The prince lets out a disappointing sigh after confirming that this might be her true identity. They make their way to the emissary, who is honored to meet her. She suggests to him not to refer to her by that name and prefers the name Tinashe. Kagar explains that the founding of Kuzco has created haven for mages that were persecuted in the kingdom of Tyre. The main goal of Kuzco is to utilize and develop the skills of these mages, so he has come to ask for Tinashe's knowledge to aid with this endeavor. The witch frankly informs the envoy that she's in Farsas to serve as Oscar's protector. The witch also makes it clear to Kagar that she only met him because the prince insisted. Under normal circumstances, he would need to climb her tower just to have an audience with her, which he hasn't, and she has no reason to lend her support to a fledgling nation. Tinashe sends him away. Kagar leaves frustrated, as he was sure that she'd come if he referred to her with that name. The diplomat refuses to go back empty-handed, so he tries to find a way to separate the witch from the prince. He lets out a sinister grin when he spots Meridina sitting alone reading a book. All the while, the couple meet Lucrezia in one of the corridors and asks if she has any information on the Kuzco country. She has never heard of it. The prince tries to prompt her to say something by revealing that the northern nation is a collection of mages who proclaimed independence in the past year. It works because Lucrezia asks Tinashe if she has noticed the strange magic emanating from the north recently. Just like the magical lake, they are discreet and periodically fluctuate. Meridina menacingly walks towards them as they discuss. A concerned call from Alce catches their attention, just in time for Tinashe to counter using Lucrezia's blade. Alce manages to stop both their strikes, and the prince holds the general at sword point, demanding to know what is going on. Meridina gets held back as she shouts for Tinashe to leave their country with her conniving techniques that deceive men's hearts. These words stab the witch more than any blade could. Because she has heard similar allegations so many times, Tinashe gets sad by these accusations because she has never desired anyone's heart. As the prince consoles her, Lucrezia notes that Meridina is under mind control. Oscar begs for her to undo it. The forest witch is willing to do so, but states that it will cost the crown prince. Tinashe goes to bed early due to feeling upset. Her colleague comes to inform her that she has finished treating Meridina. She thanks her without turning around. Some days pass, and Oscar is summoned to the tower by Tinashe. She informs him that she has sent out a familiar to go investigate what is going on in Kuzco. However, the main reason she summoned him is for them to start daily sparring. She promises him that she will not meet her demise during their fights, so he should try his best. The witch commends his performance for his first day. He wants to know why she's training him. Tinashe doesn't want a future where his lack of strength closes certain paths that he might want to take. They continue their daily sparring, which gradually gets more difficult with the addition of summoned opponents that simultaneously attack him. She attacks him again with the invisible vine and manages to subdue him with it this time around. The witch reveals that he should be able to see it since he dodged it when they sparred in the palace, and warns him not to let his mental state affect his fighting. She helps him up, but he collapses due to exhaustion and later wakes up at the top of the tower. The prince notices the witch working on something and tries to riz her up, but he fails yet again because he got an F in Rizonomics. Tinashe gives him tea to help him recover from his fatigue. She reveals that he has magical powers, but he can't use them while wielding Acacia. However, he still should be able to see magic. The following day, she gets him to practice this by casting a ring of fire around. He's tasked with cutting through the magic by observing the flow and finding the spot that acts as the linchpin of the spell's composition. Oscar aimlessly swings his sword at first, till he finally calms down and finds the seal that is creating the spell. He cuts it with his sword, which extinguishes the flames. Tinashe is impressed by how quickly he figured it out. Their training is interrupted by some new challengers of the tower. The Azure Moon Witch welcomes them and promises to grant their wish if they defeat Oscar. They get hyped and attack him, but are swiftly taken out. Oscar is interested to know who would win in a fight between him and Tinashe. The witch feels like the uncertainty is what makes it interesting. Her familiar returns from its investigation, so they have a meeting to talk about the findings. The witch reveals that 200 mages have gathered in Kuskal. Lazar is stunned to hear this because the average nation has between 20 to 30 mages. Oscar wonders if the small nation is looking to start a war. The witch doesn't think they can rule that out because the mages are aiming to summon demons. It is also disclosed that Kuskal has a monarchy, but their identity is unknown. The only thing that is certain is that it's not the former lord of the domain. The prince feels like there is a good chance that the king is a mage since the kingdom is revolved around magic. He wants them to keep investigating because he's certain that they are plotting something. Alce barges into the office with awful news that General Eddard has met his demise. The funeral is held not long after, and Lazar talks about how the veteran was in poor health. This loss hits Morales especially hard because he was a distant relative that treated her with such kindness. Oscar also speaks about how he and Alce are both indebted to him since he used to train them. The closeness of death around them prompts Oscar to remind Tinashe. The general's belongings will be left with his close friends. Lazar also used his opportunity to inform Alce of the prince's curse. They tease Oscar by asking Tinashe why she doesn't want to marry him. As they joke, she knocks down the sugar and breaks the lid. She uses magic to move the sugar back into the container, but she's not able to fix the lid. The witch explains, even though she can stop time, she can't undo what has been broken since all living things share the same fate of death. Elsewhere, Kagar is attacked by Morales because his lord eliminated someone dear to her in the past. She unleashes her familiar on him. Tinashe has a reoccurring dream of Renaku carrying her to show her something important, but the dream fades as she's placed into bed by Oscar. The prince suspects that she had a nightmare because she fell asleep sitting up. He tells her to get some proper rest as he leaves her chambers. The following day, the king summons his son, who arrives wanting to know what they were discussing with his protector. Kevin discloses that he was seeking counsel from her regarding his son's bride, and Oscar is a little dumbfounded at first till he realizes that they are talking about Morales. The king highlights how his daughter-in-law needs to have high magical resistance. He wanted to know if the girl in question meets those requirements. The witch feels like it would be barely possible for Morales, even though her magical power that is sealed away easily exceeds that of a court mage. Tinashe figured that she would be a potential candidate as a bride. The maid's magic is passed through her family bloodline. Oscar is a little annoyed that he wasn't told about this. Tinashe was sure that he would object at the idea, just like his current tone is suggesting. The king ends their conversation to inform his son that they are doing it for his sake. He feels like this is a good opportunity, so he should stop trying to arrogantly solve the problem alone and get to know Morales better. Oscar later tries to strike up a conversation with her about her sealed magic as she cleans his office. The maid divulges how her mother placed the seal and Master Kumu reinforced it. The prince's attention turns to Tinashe as he asks Lazar why the witch hasn't been coming around for the past week. She has been at her tower hard at work trying to analyze the curse. She is joined by Larizia, who comes to get an update about the situation. Later that evening, Tinashe is alerted by Latola of a new challenger arriving at the tower. This perplexes the witch because she closed off the entrance. The assistant reveals that the person used a teleportation circle to enter. Within a short moment, the prince is at the top of the tower. Latola announces he has set the record for the shortest time by the smallest party to complete the tower. It is clear to her that the prince has surpassed the limits of a normal human. Oscar grabs Tinashe by the face as he's more interested in learning why she's been hiding from him. She points to the curse that she's trying to break. The prince doesn't feel like she needs to rush it. Tinashe explains how the blessing the Witch of Silence placed on him is elegant. It comes together so beautifully that it has made her realize that love and hatred are two sides of the same coin. This conclusion terrifies her. Oscar holds the witch to comfort her and requests she make dinner whenever she's free. She returns to the castle where Alce pulls her to the side to talk about Morales. He checked through General Eddard's belongings and couldn't find anything tying her to him. This prompted him to investigate her background, and he didn't get any information on her. Alce wonders if it's okay to consider someone they know nothing about for the princess title. Tinashe informs him about her continent-wide search for suitable women for Oscar, but Morales didn't turn up. Even if her grandmother had the magic and was alive at the time, there were no women who had the level of power the maid has. This means she's hiding something. Tinashe is not sure if she's after the Farsis royal family, or she wants to get the witch away from the castle, knowing this would help the witch plan her next move. Alce notices Morales passing by and pretends to be intimate with Tinashe. If she's after the prince, she will not act. However, if she's targeting Tinashe, the maid will do something against the general. Unbeknownst to them, Oscar observes the fraternizing and storms into his office vexed because he didn't know the witch belongs to the streets. He later summons Tinashe to his office and places a ceiling ornament that is made with the same properties as acacia. It is an artifact that only direct royal descendants can handle. It seals the witch's magic. The prince doesn't intend to allow another man to swipe her from him. He picks her up ready to show his love, but it triggers the dream of Renaku carrying her. She unconsciously unleashes a hidden power that shatters the windows and knocks down the furniture. The prince calms her down with a face touch and apologizes. He explains that it was all an act to startle her a little. Tinashe also apologizes and clarifies her actions with Alce. Oscar confesses that he has already given the guy a good beating. The general didn't suffer any major injuries as he covertly expressed his frustration during their 10 sparring rounds. The witch feels bad and makes the intention to go heal him after their conversation. The prince tells Tinashe not to hide information about Morales from him because the girl is too suspicious. The witch wanted to gather evidence before reporting. She also didn't want to ruin any chance of him falling in love with her. Oscar gives her a nuggie and pulls her before his father and all the top officials. Even Morales is summoned. The prince makes it clear that Tinashe is in the castle because he has taken a liking to her. So any attempts to match him with other women is futile because he will always choose the witch. This makes her blush. He then turns to Morales to inform her that he has no intention of making her his wife. He officially removes her from her position as his personal maid till an investigation is completed on her. As she mildly protests, an order is given to escort her out. Tinashe senses that something has breached the castle's barrier. The prince also hears a growl and a beast's footsteps. The witch pushes some background character standing next to Morales out of the way. Tinashe tries to cast a spell, but the bracelet prevents this. Oscar pulls her out of harm's way, but her eye gets injured in the process. Her natural ketchup splatters on his face. Morales has broken the seal placed on her, which reveals her identity as Valt's partner. She lets the witch know that she would have spared her if she didn't catch on to her deception. The prince removes the bracelet from Tinashe. She tells him to step back, because the defensive barrier she cast over him has weakened due to the residue being splashed on him. Everyone evacuates the hall, leaving the duo to face the threat. Tinashe is unable to open her right eye due to the injury. The demonic beast bursts into the room. The witch realizes that they regenerated it from the core of the one she defeated earlier. Oscar steps forward to deal with the creature because of her eye injury, and he wants to test the results of his training. She makes it difficult for him by forbidding him from getting hurt. As they clash with the maid and her beast, Tinashe has two plans. One will destroy half of the castle, and the other will put the prince in danger. Oscar chooses the second, so the witch takes a support role and casts an incantation. The prince is to deal with their attacker in the meantime. He gets serious and switches his blade to his dominant hand. He swiftly disposes of the demonic beast, which gives Tinashe the chance to cast her spell that covers the area in darkness. She allows Morales to escape so that they can track her. She infiltrates the royal treasury to retrieve an item. Her moment of happiness when finding it is ruined when Tinashe comes in. The maid insists that she needs it. Morales tells the witch that she will be reunited with Renaku before trying to escape, but she's captured. She drops the box, and an orb falls out. Morales removes her soul from her body to avoid being interrogated and calls to Valt in her final moments, wishing that she was stronger. Tinashe later fully heals, and Oscar reveals that the orb belonged to his mother, but he doesn't know what it's used for. He gets a little headache from tiredness, and before going to get some rest, he confesses his love to Tinashe and asks her to marry him, but she rejects him again. Our boy really needs to get on that quantum physics course by Professor Yuya. The witch intends to leave him with countless options so that he forgets about her. Elsewhere, it is revealed that Renaku's name is Lanak, and he's the king of Kuskal. Him and his mage army overlook a burning city, enjoying the sight of their destruction. The monarch comments on how a new age is about to dawn on the mainland, but the four great nations must be wiped out first. During that interim, Tinasha completes her counter to the curse that plagues Oscar. Her familiar comes to inform her of Lanak's sighting. The witch wonders why he would reveal himself after 400 years. She thanks the cat for its hard work and allows it to rest. That night, she pays the prince a visit as he sleeps and administers her counter against the Witch of Silence's blessing. Oscar wakes up the following morning with markings drawn all over his body that has been done using Tinasha's red residue. The witch fell asleep near to him, so he immediately wakes her to ask for an explanation. She reveals that she placed another curse over the Witch of Silence's blessing so that they would nullify each other. It's a bit anticlimactic, but she has broken this curse. Oscar is shocked to hear this. Tinasha gives him permission to wash off the markings on his body as she used it as a catalyst. He thanks her before she goes to get some sleep. The witch later protests the idea of attending King Kevin's birthday celebration. It seems more like a diplomacy ball than a ceremony, looking at the guests that are going to be in attendance. Lazar interrupts to present a message from the Kingdom of Tyre. Their crown prince Riust will not be able to attend because he's dealing with the aftermath from the attack from Kuskal. His sister Princess Cecilia will be arriving instead. Oscar is more interested about this attack. Lazar reports that Kuskal mages burned down a Tyre city near their shared border. The prince wonders if this is an act of revenge because Tyre has persecuted mages for hundreds of years now. Tinasha pulls Oscar to the side and transfers ownership of Nark to the prince since the dragon has taken a liking to him. He doesn't protest and becomes the new master of the creature. The witch surprises him by sealing it with a rare show of affection. The night of the king's birthday celebration comes, and Tinasha is a little uncomfortable attending since it's unheard of for a witch to show herself at such an event. Oscar assures her that he will keep her identity a secret. As they catch the attention of the room with their entrance, Tinasha warns him not to address her as his fiancée. The prince gives his official birthday wishes to his father before mingling with the other guests. Cecilia strikes up a conversation with Oscar and pulls him away for a private discussion when the topic of the attack on their nation comes up. Meanwhile, Kevin calls Tinasha and thanks her for curing his son. He expresses his wish that she would marry him, but she's still opposed to the idea. She quietly leaves the ceremony, happy that her dress makes her unable to dance. The witch lets out a sudden gasp and calls Lanak's name when she senses something. She interrupts Cecilia's private audience with Oscar, but it looks like she saves the prince because he looks so bored of her frivolous chatter. The princess gets offended that a lowly mage has the audacity to ask her to leave. Tinasha gets serious, which intimidates Cecilia to quietly excuse herself. She rushes over to Oscar and casts a spell as she informs him that she should have died 400 years ago. Based on this, she warns him not to be infatuated with the dead. He has to go and accomplish his destiny. As she steps back, she also reminds him that the future of the kingdom's people depends on him. Oscar gets up to reach for her, but he freezes in place. She asks him to remember what she told him when she broke Lucrezia's spell. Shortly after, Lanak appears. He informs Tinasha that he has come for her and comments on how beautiful she is. She rushes over and ecstatically hugs him. How Oscar is feeling inside right now. He knows that she was looking for him, but he tells her that he couldn't act. Lanak reveals that he created the nation of Kuskal for her sake. It's a fine location that has been cleared of the surrounding cities. Oscar is shocked to hear Lanak say that he plans to make Tinasha the queen of this nation. He turns his attention to the prince and his sword Acacia, but the witch states that she used to have a contract with Oscar. Lanak prepares to eliminate a future threat, but Tinasha informs him that her contract with the prince is over, and he's not strong enough to wield that blade effectively. She suggests they leave. Oscar tries to attack, but Tinasha warns him that he will have to face her if he wants to take out Lanak. The king of Kuskal doesn't want his queen in harm's way, so they leave inside a portal. The witch gives him the "don't follow me" look. The following day, Sylvia goes to Tinasha's room sad that she has left. The mage later joins the other retainers who are apprehensive to interact with Oscar because he's in a bad mood. He comes out of his office and gives Lazar his completed work and informs his assistant that he's going to Laurizia's forest. Lazar tries to stop him given the danger, but Laurizia informs them that she has saved him the trip as she appears before them. She came to confirm if Tinasha really left. The witch of the forest reveals that she received an invite to join Kuskal but refused it. She can imagine that other witches did as well, so Tinasha accepting will cause trouble across the mainland. Oscar wants to know what her relationship with Lanak is. Laurizia enlightens him that she has been looking for him ever since she became a witch. She teases Oscar for being jealous when he voices his opinion that Lanak didn't look like he was in his right mind when they interacted. He looked like he was in a dreamlike haze. Laurizia doesn't think that matters. The important thing is that she accepted him and asked the prince if he has the right to interfere. Oscar refuses to give up on her because she's irreplaceable to him. I think this guy has been listening to too much Beyoncé. He intends to eliminate Lonak and bring his love back, but if she insists on being with someone else, then he'll let her go. After hearing this declaration, Larizia decides to reveal what Tinashe told her about her past. Before starting, she's only willing to reveal this to those who are prepared to fight the witch to the death. Lazar, Kav, and Meridina leave, while Alce, Sylvia, and Doan remain. The Forest Witch begins by revealing Tinashe's full name, and they are shocked to hear that her family name is Toldar, which is a magic empire that was destroyed overnight 400 years ago. This means that Tinashe is royalty. Larizia discloses that she was the future queen candidate. Toldar was a monarchy, but their ruler was decided by pure power and not lineage. To prevent eccentrics from rising to the top, prospects are separated from their parents and raised in the palace. Tinashe possessed extraordinary power, so she was chosen to be the candidate to be queen, and Lonak was the chosen candidate to be king. The guy was also the current king's only son, but he was far less powerful than Tinashe, so he would have been her consort. She was 5 years younger than him, but he treated her so well. But the royal court was split into two factions. The reformists called for diplomacy with foreign nations, and the traditionalists who sought to maintain isolation. Neither side refused to yield till the king fell ill. Disputes broke out with the reformist backing Tinashe and the traditionalist backing Lonak. The traditionalist came up with a plan to prevent Tinashe's accession to the throne while also increasing Lonak's power. The plan was executed when Tinashe was 13. Lonak took her to an altar and tried to sacrifice her to harness a great power, but they were unable to contain it, leading to a giant release of energy. Lonak escaped, but Tinashe managed to contain it using herself as a vessel. However, the entire kingdom was already destroyed. The overflow of magic is what created the 5 magical lakes across the mainland. Tinashe built a tower in the corner of what had been Toldar territory to live in, and has been searching for Lonak since. Oscar wants to know how Tinashe felt about him. Larizia informs him that it's obvious since she temporarily sealed away his defensive barrier to keep him off Lonak's radar. The witch also left her dragon with him, so she cares about him. This doesn't change his plan to defeat Lonak and return her back to his side. Oscar and top officials are summoned by the king, who reveals that they have received a letter from Kuzco. It demands that the 4 great nations, Tyiri, Caesar, Gandona, and Farsas, surrender. It is also revealed that Tyiri dispatched an army of 10,000 men into Kuzco. However, their forces were wiped out, and Kuzco only lost less than 50 mages. While that devastation was happening on the battlefield, the residents of 5 large cities in Tyiri disappeared without a trace. The building was left intact, and the one responsible is the Witch of the Azure Moon, Tinashe. Farsas has received a request of aid, and for Oscar to slay the the witch. The prince refuses to do that as he believes that there is more to this than meets the eye. He doesn't intend on forsaking his responsibility to his nation, nor lose the love of his life. His father is willing to let him do as he pleases, but he must ascend to the throne. Oscar agrees to this. He recalls Tinashe saying that he might have to eliminate her one day if he has that sword, and she's a witch. That brings the episode to an end.
Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time for more legendary tales.